Please feel free to use a chat or a Q&A function. I'm sure Carly will also be fielding questions as well, or fielding for questions. And I just also wanted to mention that today's session is going to be recorded, so if you have to hop out for any reason, I will be sending the link following today's presentation. But without further ado, Carly, please take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Sebastian. Hi, everyone. I'm Carly Osborne with the Washington State EAP. Today we are talking about burnout. So since we have an hour together, I want to make sure that we get started right away. So, our purpose together today, we're going to talk about what burnout is, explain kind of what we feel when we're experiencing it. I will actually explain what the burnout cycle is because, believe it or not, there is an actual cycle that we go through. And then we're going to learn some resources to help us kind of both work proactively to help reduce our likelihood of experiencing burnout, and then also some um, strategies we can employ should we already find ourselves kind of dealing with it. So, you're going to find that much of this might feel like common sense kind of things, and that's for a reason, because, well, it's the common sense things that help us, stop the stress cycles that lead to us burning out. So, without further ado, let's take a minute and look at some statistics. So, when I first put this presentation together in 2022, I noticed that the research regarding burnout was really starting to build. We can probably guess why, given the time period. But there were some interesting statistics that really kind of stuck out to me. And just to share a few of those, they're not the ones that are on the slide here, but just to share a few interesting ones that kind of stuck with me for all this time. When we look at our workplaces, what we are finding, especially as we head into 2025 here, people who have jobs that put them in what are typically defined as middle management. So those who have bosses above them, but they're also responsible for leading people. So they're leading teams, are burning out at higher rates than other people in other positions within organizations. We're also finding that people who are just now entering the workforce, so we're thinking of those people who are early in their careers, maybe they just graduated college, this is their first job, or there's their first real big professional career. They also seem to be burning out much faster than people who've been, well established into their careers. So something interesting to think about. It's also kind of interesting when we compare that generation to those who are kind of nearing that retirement stage where they're thinking, up a couple more years and hopefully I get to go off and enjoy retirement. We find that they tend to be, the group that is affected by burnout the least. And then when we look at it, based on things like gender or perceived gender, that those who present as female or identify as female typically also tend to burn out the most because proportionately they are also the people who handle most of the work at home too. So just kind of a couple of different and interesting facts there. It's of course by no means 100% inclusive of everybody, and we're all different people. So the statistics are going to affect us differently, but I thought they were just kind of interesting, and I do like to share that burnout is on the rise, and it's not just a problem here in our country, it is a worldwide problem. So we're also aware that it's not just us dealing with it. We're all kind of stuck in this together. So, what is burnout? The actual definition is that it is the emotional depletion and loss of motivation that results from prolonged exposure to chronic emotional and interpersonal stressors on the job. It's a really fancy way of saying it's that what happens when we have dealt with so much stress and so much pressure for so long that we just don't have it in us to keep going anymore. We've let our work responsibilities pile up. We've got our home stressors that are getting to us, and it's all just too much. And it's just really weighing on us. And what happens is if you're someone who's familiar with running a marathon and you're familiar with the runner's bonk or hitting the wall, what happens is your body just runs out of energy and you can't do it anymore. And so you're tired and it all just kind of falls apart. So in really simple terms, burnout is the end. I just can't do it. I don't have it in me anymore. And when I started researching for this presentation, although I am someone who did deal with burnout, I was clinically diagnosed by both my primary care physician and a psychiatrist. I actually did take a leave of absence from my prior job to work through the burnout because it was that bad. When I came onto the EAP, I will forever joke, by the way, that the reason they hired me is because they knew this topic needed to be talked about. And who better to talk about it than someone who's actually dealt with it? Um, I thought I was being, pithy and funny when I called it breaking the burnout cycle without realizing that it is actually a defined cycle. So I thought, hey, why not include those in here to really bring home the point? So I'm going to take us all the way back to 1974 to the work of Dr. Herbert Freudenberger. He was a psychoanalyst focusing on issues in organizations. One of the main things that he studied was stress. He was really looking at the things that people were going through in the workplace. What was causing them to reach a point where they were just like, I can't do this anymore and leave, or what was causing, these mood changes where people were just really unhappy all the time. And what he kind of noticed is that people kind of went through this linear cycle as they progressed through things like a new job or a new project or experiencing changes in their workplace, and that it was something physiological to that person. It was something, sorry, psychological to that person. And so he kind of noticed that it's a 12-step process that he identified. And it kind of looks like this. We start at stage one with a compulsion to prove. Whether we're trying to prove things to someone else or to ourselves, we want to prove that we know what we're doing, whether it's starting that job, maybe we're a new supervisor, we've got a handle on that project, we can handle all the things. We are going to prove that we can do this. And we do that by working harder. And there's nothing wrong with that. We all do it. Some of us are really great at it. We can do this, no problem. But for some of us, to work harder, we kind of have to move into step three where we start neglecting ourselves. We stop doing the things that make us us. We stop taking time off from work. We work a little longer. We take the work home with us. We skip our breaks. We stop doing, putting us as a priority. And then we kind of start noticing that's causing a bit of conflict internally because that survivor part of our brain is waking up and going, something doesn't feel right here. But we're not ready to admit that we have a problem because, well, it could still turn around. Stress can go away. The project could be completed. You could get to stage four and go, you know what? You're right, brain. This isn't right. And stop right there and do something. Or it can keep going on. We can go, nope, this is good, we're going to get through this. And so we have to make a decision. It's not something we do consciously, but we start to revise our values where we say, work has to come first. I need this to go well because I need this paycheck, because I want that promotion, because this. And so we might revise those goals and our values where, maybe our life outside of work doesn't matter anymore. Maybe the value isn't that I'm here because I want to make a difference. We're going to do something to make sure that our values are now in alignment with whatever it is that's driving us. But this is going to cause more problems, right? Because we are now all over the place. We might even be experiencing some cognitive dissonance. We're kind of starting to see some problems poking through. Other people might even be noticing that we're not who we usually are, but we're going to deny those problems. No, I'm fine. It's just, it's some stress from work or when we're home. Oh, no, sorry, I can't do that thing this weekend. I know I said I would do it, but I got so much to do. Oh, no, it's not a problem. Once this thing is over, we'll all be back to normal. Totally fine. But we can't do that forever. So then we start to withdraw because withdrawing and isolating is easier than having to face the fact that people notice that we're not ourselves and admitting that we're not ourselves. So we withdraw. Some of us do it in very obvious ways. Others are a bit more subtle. Me, I was kind of obvious in the fact that I learned how to sit in my office and how much I could move before I switched on my overhead light that was motion censored. So I was able to do some work in my office in complete darkness so that anybody walking by who saw the window that faced internally to our building didn't realize I was actually in my office because I'd never moved enough to turn on the light. So, hey, I could avoid everybody. It was kind of wonderful at first. So, we're withdrawn. That's a behavioral change, right? Normally, at work, even if we're not best friends with everybody we work with, we usually can stop and say hi, or, we might make an appearance in the lunchroom, socialize in some way. We're not normally completely closed off. But We're also, we might be angry. We might find at home that we're more snappy with people. We're not doing the things we want to do. We're ignoring friends. And this is when people are saying to us, "What is going on with you?" And it's getting harder for us to deny those problems. But we're still not quite ready to get there. So we're moving on to stage 9, where we're going to reach a stage of depersonalization. We're starting to feel detached from everything. We're not ourselves. We're just not there. It's not worth it to us. And so what happens is as we move through depersonalization, we become kind of empty inside. Nothing holds meaning for us anymore because it's too much. Everything is overwhelming. We're starting to experience some of the physical symptoms of burnout that I'll talk about in a minute. And that kind of leads us into depression, where again, it's not worth it. I'm sad. I don't want to do this. I'm angry, whatever it is. And that's eventually what brings us to burnout. We reach that point. If you're the runner, you've hit that wall, your body's depleted of everything, and you're tired. This is that emotional exhaustion that we feel. We are done. And so this is the cycle that Freudenberger identified. And this is the standard that we use to identify burnout for the longest time. It's a really well researched, really well used theory to show what we experience when we go through burnout. But it is also very cumbersome. It takes a lot to explain. So thankfully, modern psychoanalysts have taken it and kind of condensed it a bit for us so that we have a better understanding and can explain it in fewer steps. Plus, they added something because what we see happen is that, we hit burnout and you don't magically get better. So, with this newer model that we use, the 12 steps are broken down between steps 1 through 4. So, honeymoon, onset of stress, the chronic stress. So, stage 1, we're doing pretty good. Stage 2, the stress starts creeping in. Stage 3, the stress with us is all the time. Stage 4, we're in burnout. What they then added was habitual burnout. And this is the problem that we're seeing most often with people is that we've moved past the burnout and we are now habitually burnout. And this is the point where most people start to make really rash decisions. In my case, I was at a terrible level of burnout. And I made a rash decision one day where I wrote a very inappropriate email, sent it out to my entire organization, about 800 employees, sent it out to our administrative staff, sent it out to our board of trustees. I sent this email to everybody. I felt good for about 10 minutes or so. And then it kind of hit me, and I went, oh, this isn't right. And I actually called my doctor and said something along the lines of, I think I'm broken because I did something I would never normally do. And that's what actually got me started with realizing that I was in burnout. And it wasn't just regular burnout, it was habitual. It was actually 12 years of stress from the particular profession that I was in that had just built up and built up and built up. And finally, I broke. So, what we were really trying to do is we're going to acknowledge that burnout is going to happen. For some of us, knock on wood, you won't ever, but it is likely to happen. We don't ever want to get to habitual because we make a drastic change. I'm going to quit my job because it's the job, it's the stress. I can't deal with it. We quit our job, we go to a new one, and it might be great for a couple of weeks, but you're still burnt out. You haven't dealt with it. And so you're going to start that cycle all over again, and it's just going to get worse. So we're going to try to break that. What happens is when we've hit burnout, we have three big things that come together. It's the depersonalization, the emotional exhaustion, and this is the exhaustion that goes beyond, oh, I just need a nap to catch up. It is the bone weary, I am so tired. Everything is just exhausting. The thought of everything is exhausting. I'm sure as I'm speaking, many of you are like, I'm familiar with that feeling. And it's also this sense of reduced personal accomplishment because we feel like we can't stay on top of anything, The work is overwhelming, and then we get home and we're already overwhelmed. So then we're overwhelmed with the overwhelm at home, and it's just this thing. And these three things come together and they create the perfect storm. And that's what keeps us in burnout because until we deal with these three things, we're not going to break through and find a way to get better. And how that might look, because obviously we're not walking around going, well, I'm dealing with depersonalization or my reduced sense of accomplishment or even my emotional exhaustion. We're looking at it in other ways. We're experiencing and exhibiting other symptoms. So we're doing things like we have headaches or digestive problems. Upset stomach is a really huge part of burnout. We're sleeping too much or too little. Emotionally, we can kind of be all over the place. So, we've got that to think of. And then we also have the social well-being aspect. So, skipping or leaving work, isolation, like I talked about, hiding in my office, outbursts of anger, neglecting our responsibilities. So, you can see everything that's going on in our head, all of that stress that we're living with, that survival mode that we're existing in is manifesting in physical, emotional, mental ways. And this is what's really going to kind of hopefully be our wake up call that we need to stop whatever it is that we're going through and work through it. So, it's normal, of course. Full disclosure, we're occasionally going to feel these things because we all feel stress, but it's when we start feeling these things, more often, they kind of stay consistent. It's, a weekly thing that becomes a daily thing, it becomes a monthly thing that we start realizing we're a problem. So, if you have a digestive issue for a week or so and then it goes away, probably not burnout, probably something you ate at a party last week. Now, really, really important before we move on. Um, I did get guidance from one of our amazing counselors when I was working on this presentation because there's a lot of emotional and mental and behavioral changes that we go through when we're dealing with burnout. We really wanted to point out that while depressive symptoms are a part of burnout, depression itself is not burnout. And it can be really hard to distinguish between the two. Looking at this slide here, you can kind of see the differences, but the easiest way to really explain it is when you have depression symptoms that are related to burnout, when you have recovered from the burnout, those depression symptoms should go away. However, if what you're dealing with is beyond burnout, if it is something relating to a major depressive episode, all the vacations in the world are not going to cure it. All of the self care in the world, stress management techniques are usually not going to cure it because it's indicating that there's something bigger going on. So if you're finding that you're experiencing any of the symptoms that are listed under the major depressive episode column, that extreme exhaustion, reduced function, that you cannot find happiness in anything, if you have reached a point where you're feeling hopelessness or suicidal ideation or just generally no self-worth, no self-esteem, if you find that you are in that place and this is what you are feeling, I do encourage you and implore you to please reach out for help because it could be an indication that there is something more going on and it would just really benefit you to reach out and seek some help. So again, depression associated with burnout, symptoms should go away once you have worked through and recovered from burnout. But if the symptoms of the depression are longer lasting and affecting your life overall, regardless of what's going on, please do seek help. That is my PSA to help you kind of get an idea of the difference. So I realize we are a very large group and we only have an hour together. So I'm not going to actually force us into a conversation, just something to think about because I will share this PDF to be shared out with everyone. When you get a chance to look at this later, or if you listen to the recording, just take a few minutes to kind of reflect on where you might be feeling if you're feeling symptoms of burnout, just so you can be aware of what your stress levels might be and what you might be able to do and start implementing to reduce or manage some of the symptoms that you're facing. We'll keep going on though. So we know what burnout is. We kind of might have an idea where we might fall on that scale. But let's talk about some preventative actions. These are going to focus on us as individuals because that is the biggest thing that we can control. Yes, there will always be organizational changes that can be made at a higher level that can help impact and reduce our likelihood of burnout. But admittedly, most of us here today are not in the positions where we can actually create and implement those changes. So we're going to focus on us as individuals because the one thing I always want you to remember is that if you're not breathing, you can't help the people around you breathe. Pilots are so amazing, or when they remind us of that when we get on planes. You've got to breathe before others can breathe. So we're going to focus on you and we're going to talk about some really practical preventative things that we can implement to help ourselves mitigate the stress that we're feeling due to our work environments. So, we're going to start with time management. Time management is something that we talk about all the time, but it's also something that we're all a little kind of iffy on. Full disclosure, I'm very bad with time management. I am either 100% focused and going at it, or, my little hamster in my brain is off throwing a dance party and I can't get anything done to save my life. So, time management is a huge thing because we all know when we have those times where we're just, I'm not into it. I can't manage my time. I feel overwhelmed. It gets away from us. But research has shown that when we can sit down and actually manage our time, using techniques like things like the Eisenhower matrix. If you're not familiar with that, it's where we sit down, we look at the tasks for the day, we categorize them into 4 different categories: urgent needs done, important needs done, and then important but can wait, and then low priority, it doesn't need to be done right now. I actually have a matrix and an exercise that you can do to practice that I will send out. Or when we can do things like Pomodoro techniques, where we block out our time for 25 minutes. I work on this, I take a 5-minute break, then I go on to the next thing, and so forth. When we could take the time to plan ahead, to look at our schedules, to create that daily list, to create that weekly to do list, and actually plan out times for when our work will be disrupted and include times for scheduling things like taking breaks, taking lunches, taking that time to walk away from our work, that we are actually helping ourselves to reduce the stress, because ultimately that's what it's coming down to, is it's the stress that's causing us to burn out. So we want to make sure that we are prioritizing our time in a way that works for us. There's also another really big thing that we do that actually works against us, even though we think it works for us, and that is multitasking. For a while there, it seemed like everybody talked about multitasking and tried to promote it as this amazing thing that we are all highly capable of doing. But surprise, we are not. We are not built that way. We are not capable of focusing fully on multiple tasks at once. And by participating in multitasking, what we're actually doing is just creating more work for ourselves. So, research does show now that we are more likely to be able to reduce our stress, reduce our overwhelm on our workload if we actually just focus on one task at a time. Because if you're only half focusing on 2 tasks at a time, you're only half getting them done. It's going to take you longer. So we want to make sure that we're finding ways to work on time management to reduce stress, to help manage our workloads. Because one of the biggest things when we look at the research for burnout and what people experience is that it's the overwhelm for our workloads, because they are so disproportionate right now. Many of us have too much to do, some have too little to do, and we have to find ways to balance that and make it work for us. I'm also going to talk about self care. If you rolled your eyes when I said self care, totally understand you. I understand completely, because you probably thought, oh, here she's going to talk about bubble baths and lavender candles, or she's going to mention some Instagram influencer who has a miracle shake or a little patch you can wear that's going to make your self care 100% perfect. I'm not going to do that though. Really, what I want to let you know is that what happens when we are under great deals of stress and we are feeling overwhelmed, we stop taking care of ourselves on even the most basic level. We skip eating, we skip engaging in physical activity, we stop doing the things that make us us, we stop doing the things that make us happy. But we have to make sure that we are still making ourselves a priority. So we have to do the things like get outside, take a walk. If you're in a work environment where you occasionally host meetings with a team, take it outside. Schedule a 5-minute break where you get up and go take a breath of fresh air. Make sure you're eating. I'm not going to tell you what to eat. I'm not a nutritionist, but I am going to tell you that get up and walk away from your desk to eat your lunch, to take a break, to focus on how you're eating. Don't eat with your phone in your hand. Take your time, slow down, make sure you're doing your hobbies. Believe it or not, hobbies have been shown to really work away at that stress, especially a hobby that's creative. So things like making music, writing, painting, crafting, something that allows you to really get into it and focus on it can help alleviate stress. It helps let us feel a sense of control and get us back to what we're doing. So we have to make sure we are doing self-care because again, if you're not breathing, you can't help anyone else breathe. And if you have to schedule self-care, do it. It's okay. When I was learning to recover and get better, I would actually put that on my calendar. It was a calendar I had to share with my therapist at the time. And I would actually have to block out 1 hour every week where all it said was, I am doing nothing. And I had to teach myself to relax. I had to teach myself to be able to sit on the couch and not do anything. And it was the hardest thing I ever had to do because we're taught very often that not doing anything, watching a TV show, staring off into space, taking a nap is considered lazy and not good for us. But we actually need that time. So make sure you are setting aside the time and taking care of yourself in a way that makes you happy and makes sure that you're reminding yourself that you are a priority. And I highly do suggest taking the time to, if you have not done it before, take the time, even 10 minutes, just not do anything. Just sit down, don't do anything. It will probably be one of the hardest things you have ever done. I've gotten really good at it though, so it gets easier. Another really important thing as a preventative measure is learning how to set boundaries and building emotional resilience. We all know that in the workplace, it can be very hard to set a boundary because we want to be a team player. We want to support our colleagues. We want to support the people who are around us. Sometimes we're even that person who our leadership may come to in a time when they need someone. Many of us, especially those who might work with students, we tend to be in helper positions. We don't want to say no, but we have to learn to set these boundaries. I know that was a huge problem for me. I took on the work of everybody, hey, we've got an extra project, Carly will do it, and Carly wouldn't say no. So we have to learn things like how do we find a work-life balance? It means that we do actually take our vacations and we don't take our work equipment with us because then that's just working from the beach. We do take our weekends off and say, whatever your work schedule is, 5 p.m. on Friday, I'm not available because the work will still be there Monday. If I'm not in charge when an emergency happens, I'll find out about it when I need to. Learning to say no, so hard, but also kind of fun. I suggest practicing it if you have any young people in your life who are under 18. When they ask for something and you don't want them to have it or give it to them, just say no and walk away. Really fun. But learning to say no, because often what happens is someone comes to us with a request and we say no, but or no, I don't want to. What we're doing is we're giving people an excuse to talk us out of our no, so that when we're stuck doing it later, we get mad at them and not ourselves. Well, it's not my fault. I had to work late. So and so forced me to do it. So we have to learn to say no. No, can't do that. No, no, not something I can do right now. With, of course, the caveat that sometimes there will be situations where no will not work, and we have to make compromises. Yeah, I know I would, I understand that I need to work late today. I would prefer to say no, but in order to do that, I'm going to have to leave early tomorrow. Finding those compromises. This also means being able to set boundaries like when I'm at my desk and you see me focused with my little loop noise canceling headphones in. That means I'm not in the mood to talk. Or being able to say during lunchtime, I just want to go sit somewhere and read my book. You have to find the boundaries that work for you. Um, we also do have to learn to unplug as hard as it is. More and more research does show that the more time we spend online, especially doom scrolling lately, the worse it is for our emotional health. We also have to learn to communicate our needs in our workplace. That means, again, when we are overwhelmed, being able to go to someone and say, I need help with this. I have too much. I have too little to do. Learning how to do things like that. And then, of course, we all know things like taking a moment to practice gratitude. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. Just simply saying, I managed to get up today can be very helpful. Stress management techniques, positive self talk, focusing on purpose. One of the big things is stress management techniques. What typically happens is when we are in our workplaces and we are overwhelmed and feeling too much, we get into a stress cycle. Our survival instinct kicks in and wakes up, And what happens is we find that we are unable to focus, right? Where our thoughts are racing, sometimes our hearts start pounding, and it's all just too much. There are stress management techniques that we can do in a moment to help calm us down, bring us back to present, and help us get through that moment of overwhelm and panic. Something simple like a quick, deep breath in and then slowly letting it out. You can do something like progressive muscle relaxation, where you tense a muscle. You could start in your feet and move up to your body. You tense it, hold it for a second, and then just slowly release. If you have a physical object, if you ever see us at wellness or benefit fairs, we usually have some little item that we give out, something to focus on that you can hold and touch. Whatever you can do to just break the stress cycle and bring you back to yourself can help alleviate that overwhelm and help you think straight so that you're not allowing the stress to take over. You're not allowing the survival instinct to take over. So, learning how to do things, keep those boundaries, and build that emotional resilience. And just a reminder, some days you're going to be really, really great at this, and other days you might kind of stumble, and that's perfectly okay. We're humans, we have this, and it's always going to be a learning opportunity. We also want to make sure to build our overall resilience. If you don't know what resilience is, it's that ability to just bounce back when things happen. We do not always need to immediately bounce back. We bounce back at our own time. And we can do that by making sure that we are practicing those time management skills, that we are learning to say no to overcommitments, that we are making sure that we're using mindfulness techniques to reset after high pressure situations, and making sure that we have things like mentorship for career guidance and emotional support. And there is a reason that I ended this slide with emotional support. We'll get to it in just a second. Investing in professional development. There is a lot of research that shows that when we get into our professions, we do tend to kind of stop learning. And interestingly enough, when we stop learning, we find that the stress does actually get to us. And that's one of the things that can lead to burnout. Apparently, we as creatures are hardwired to learn. And research does show that people who actively seek out opportunities for professional development and growth tend to be more resilient to stress and tend to be more resilient to the overwhelm that comes with stress. So if you're someone who is, in a mentor-mentee program, or you've outlined goals for career progression, you're actively taking those steps, you're doing the things that you need to do to continually grow and learn, you are likely to be more resilient against burnout. And the big one on the end of this slide is networking. And as I had also said, social support. This is a really, really big one. And it's not something we often talk about in our workplaces because focus is on work. However, if you are not aware, the Surgeon General released a study not too long ago about the fact that we are in a loneliness epidemic, not just us, but the entire world. We are very connected through technology. However, we are also very disconnected from each other as people. There was also a study that I read that showed that we can have all the most amazing perks at work. So think best schedule, best office, best of everything. But if you do not have a support system at work, you're going to find that you're very unhappy there because we need that connection. We need someone in our corner. If we're lucky, we work in an environment where we have psychological safety and we have everybody we can turn to. Our team is there for us. Some of us do not have that. So we have to find those people that we can connect with. Personal story that when I was going through my bad period of burnout, I had an amazing support system of people I worked with, 4 people. And when I had my moment where I sat down at my desk, and this was after my 12 weeks of doctor-imposed vacation, and I'd come back and realized it wasn't getting better for me. I sat down at my desk one day, made a list, came to a decision, found my support group at lunch one day, laid it all out for them and said, "I think my only option is to quit my job. I need to find a different profession." And my support group said, "Yeah, we agree with you. Everything you've said is true." They didn't try to talk me into staying. They didn't tell me I was overreacting. They were 100% honest with me and, gave me the support to do what I needed to do, and I'm forever grateful for that because my friends were telling me to stay, my family was telling me to stay, that it would get better. But the people who knew me, who knew our work environment, who knew our jobs, understood, and they were able to help me through that. I'm still also very lucky that I have them in my life now. So we need to have those people in our workplaces, the shoulders to cry on, the person to vent to. And I will always jokingly say the person who can provide you with an alibi if you need it. So make sure you're finding those people, whether it's that direct colleague, whether it's a mentor, someone that you find through a professional association, however you find those people, make sure that you are finding them and connecting with them and remembering that support is a two-way street. So if you can provide them support as well, that is a wonderful thing. And the goal in finding that support in the workplace, you don't have to become super friends like my support group and I. You just have to be strong enough to support each other in the workplace so that you can go with that idea to celebrate a win, do whatever it is because you need that support. When we have that support, we also find that teams are stronger and more collaborative. And when we have stronger and more collaborative teams, we also find that organizations improve as well. So if there's anything that you take away from this and anything that can help you long term in reducing stress and reducing overwhelm as a means to reduce your likelihood of burnout, it's find that social support system. And if you truthfully absolutely cannot find it at work, look to your social or your religious and spiritual communities, your friend groups, online networks, whatever you have. Find that social support group of people that can be there for you because you cannot weather this alone. Again, another thing to ponder over later on if you rewatch this or if you have the PDF, who's your support people? How might you support that person? What do you need from those people? So again, just something to ponder later. So we are at that point where we've discussed what burnout is. We kind of have a good idea whether or not we could identify it in ourselves. Maybe we're seeing some signs in other people. We have an idea of some very basic things we can do to start working on building habits to prevent ourselves from reaching a point where we might actually hit burnout. But sometimes we can do everything to the best of our ability, and it might still happen because, well, that's just life and things happen. And in that case, we have to switch from looking at things in a preventative manner to looking at things as an intervention. So we're going to switch tack just a little bit, and that's what we're going to talk about. So the first thing in intervention, and it sounds kind of counterproductive, is making sure we're recognizing symptoms early. Sounds kind of hard, but making sure that when we know we've hit that emotional exhaustion, because again, it goes behind that I just need a nap to catch up. It's that irritability, it's that apathy, it's that I could go lay down now and sleep for 100 years because then I wouldn't have to deal with anything, kind of tired. When it's affecting your work, when you don't feel detached, when you're cynic about everything, when it's that constant feeling of I don't feel well, my head is constantly hurting, I've clenched my jaw so tight, I've chipped teeth, those kind of things. When you recognize the symptoms that are kind of, sparking your brain going, this isn't normally me. This isn't normally how I'm feeling. Even if you say to yourself, oh, I'm probably overreacting, go ahead and still talk to someone about it. You don't want to talk to your doctor, that's fine. Talk to a friend, talk to a family member. Just say, I'm kind of noticing these things because it might just be the thing that kicks off that it might need to start doing something now rather than getting to this point. If you have noticed, though, that you're reaching that point, now's a good time to also consider seeking support. I let mine go for far too long. And so my option at that point was I immediately had to seek professional help from my doctors and a psychiatrist, and I went into therapy. You are also very lucky that you have the support of an amazing employee assistance program, if I do say so myself. You have access to free and confidential services through an EAP. We have amazing counselors who can help you figure out plans that you can put into place to help you reduce, the things that are causing problems in your work and personal lives so that we can help reduce that stress, so that we can help you better manage that workload, so that we can stop those things that are leading you to burnout. So we're there to provide that support for you free of service whenever you need us. You can also do things on your own through guided meditations on things like stress reduction apps, burnout assessment or tools. There's even some wonderful organizations out there that provide trainings on things like mindfulness based stress reduction. Many of these groups provide free and even very low scale or sliding scale cost to attend things like this so that you can get the support of people who have had training in very basic things on how to help us reduce things like this. So we want to make sure that we're reaching out to people who have knowledge and how to help us work through this. Again, we're going to go back to those stress management techniques. We've talked about some of the things here on the slide. One of the things that I don't often mention is that there's now assistive tools out there that can help you break stress cycles. I have one that I used to wear on my wrist. It would buzz and it would activate or deactivate the vagus nerve. It would break the stress cycle. I saw one you wear as a necklace now that does basically the same thing. But there's things out there that you can employ to help break stress cycles because, again, that's really what it is. We're trying to help stop immediate stress so that we don't go into those feelings of overwhelm, those panic where we let everything grow up. So make sure that we are finding different strategies that work for us. If you're not sure what those look like, again, this is something EAP can help you with. You're always welcome to reach out to me directly because I know of some amazing tools that I'm always happy to share. A really, really big one. If you are someone who has reached a point of burnout, maybe you've decided that, you know what, now's a good time to go ahead and take that long vacation. As you come in, you have to make sure you're prioritizing that rest and recovery. You cannot immediately jump back into everything. So take the extended leave if you have it. Make sure you're keeping up on breaks. Sleep is super important because oftentimes when we're stressed, when we're overwhelmed, when it feels like it's all too much, we stop sleeping. And as much as it sounds like a broken record, we actually do need sleep. There are studies that have shown that while we are sleeping, something does occur in our brain where I really should have researched this a bit more. So I had the actual process where it does kind of go out and cleans out the things that can cause stress and stuff in our brain. So there's like a reset option while we sleep. And we also have to avoid the doom scrolling and work related concern after hours. So we have to, again, prioritize our rest and recovery to make ourselves better. A really, really, really big one. This can fall into both preventative and interventive strategies, reassessing our workloads and responsibilities. Again, I understand that based on where we work, how we work, the nature of our work, this is not always realistic for everyone. So please understand that I am aware of that and that you're going to have to do what is best for you. However, some things that we can be doing, making sure that we're communicating needs when it comes time to adjust workloads. You know, supervisors might not be able to do everything permanently, but oftentimes there is some flexibility that we can find in workloads to help people balance things better, such as task prioritization. What does that look like? What is the thing that we need done now? What is the thing that can wait? Again, enforcing our boundaries, whatever those look like for you. Because again, it is okay to say to someone, I do not have time to talk to you right now. I have to focus on this project. If you have taken that extended leave of time from work, even if it's just a vacation and you're just coming back, gradually work yourself into your responsibilities because if you rush headlong right back into the thing that caused the stress, that caused the time that you needed off, you're going to find yourself right back at the beginning. We also, again, need to make sure we're setting those realistic goals for our daily and weekly tasks. We've got people who work with us. Very often, we have people who have the exact same job with us. If we are someone who has that in our ability, let's delegate and share the work when we can. We can collaborate on so much more than we ever realize. We also make sure we're communicating our limits not only to our managers but to our colleagues. Again, I was someone if a colleague came to me and said, "Hey, I can't do this," I would immediately step up and say, "Oh, I can do it." I had to learn to stop doing that and say, "You know what? I can't actually cover that for you." And then making sure that we're aware of our long-term commitments and our ability to actually follow through on them based on capacity. It's better to say, "No, I can't do that now," than get to the time when something you're obligated to something and look at someone and say, "I'm so sorry, I can't do that now," and then feel like we're letting everyone down. So again, it's always about reassessing where we are and what we're doing. And if we start talking about it before we get to the overwhelm, we're very likely not to reach the point where we hit our wall and go, I just can't do this anymore. Excuse me. So, a really big key point that I really do like to bring up to people. Um, my road to recovery from burnout, and you got the very, very condensed story of what I went through. It is much longer, much more involved. It takes a while because often what happens is you really do pull into yourself and you kind of shut everybody out. So it takes a while, and we have to focus on rebuilding and restoring. Um, so it takes time to rebuild social connections. At first, people often feel like we let them down, maybe we rebuffed them. So it's very helpful whether you're just now noticing that it's time to start engaging in the supports to make sure you don't get to that point, or maybe you're like, oh, I'm at that point and need this now, to make sure that you are finding your social supports through those friends, colleagues, and family. There are amazing support groups out there that can help us understand our experiences, that can help us validate what we have gone through, and that can help us learn more techniques to continue rebuilding and, reintegrating ourselves to where we need to be, making sure that we slowly begin engaging in activities that help us foster sense of belonging, because again, that isolation can become very overwhelming and it can be very hard to rebuild that connection and want to feel like we're a part of something again, because it affects us emotionally a lot. The emotions were probably the hardest thing to handle. We have to find those things that work for us so that we can learn and rebuild that emotional resilience. So smart goals for rebuilding confidence. What are the things we can do so I can remind myself that this was bad, but I went through it. I survived through it. Here's how I'm going to keep myself from going through it again. And here's how I can get myself back to where I wanted to be. Remembering things like grounding techniques, journaling if you're okay with that. I actually have other practices for journaling if writing isn't a thing for you. Learning self-compassion. This is something that is slightly different. It is actually quite different from self-care. If you are not familiar with it, I highly encourage you to do a quick Google search for Dr. Kristen Neff. She's a big founder and proponent of self compassion. And in a really, really short elevator pitch for it, self compassion is the ability to learn to treat ourselves like we would other people. So, how you would support your best friend through something like this, you learn how to support yourself through it. And again, we have to put ourselves first. So we have to learn to start being gentle with ourselves and slowly introducing those physical activities and reestablishing things like regular hobbies, regular patterns, regular schedules, whatever it is that we need to do to get ourselves healthy and back in our workplaces. So I want to leave you with your next steps, some things that we can do to make sure that we are actually really thinking about this topic and that we're preparing to either put preventative measures in place, or maybe if we're thinking which now might be the time to reach out for some help. These are the next steps that I would really like for you to consider. I'd like you to think about one prevention strategy that you can employ for yourself in your workplace. It could be something I mentioned today, something that came up to, or something you find on your own later on. I'd like you to think about that one thing that can work for you. Try it out. If it doesn't work for you, find something else. Remember, it's all about trial and error. It's all about finding the things that work for you. When you are capable, if you have the opportunity and you feel up for it, we have to remember to advocate for better organizational support. And it's, things like making sure that you can let people know the resources that are available to them. It doesn't have to be huge advocacy work, or it doesn't have to be organizational change. It can just be knowing that when a coworker is going through something, hey, did you know we have this resource available to help you? Maybe someone in your household's going through something. Here's the support that's available to you. That's all we really have to do. And then explore resources that we have discussed today. And what's really great this is our contact info. I will have my info share out. I did put together resources available for you to help continue learning about this topic and about the things that you can do to help yourself um, break free from a burnout cycle, stop it before it happens, learn about stress cycles and what you can do to help protect yourself. Um, there's more to it than this. It's actually expanded several times over the years. So I will make sure that you have this. Um, that is everything I have to say about burnout today, because this is the short of the three presentations I have on burnout. I do appreciate the time that you have given me today. I do hope that you have taken something away from it, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Carly. Uh, and if anybody has any questions, I didn't see any that were messaged, but it looks like please feel free again to use the chat. But yeah, wonderful information. And thank you so much for the time and sharing all of the knowledge you have on this, Carly. And I'm sorry, you don't hear the background noise, do you?
I do.
Okay. I think somebody's cleaning the windows.
I think at this point in time, we've all kind of gotten used to all of the background noises that people hear. So yeah, thank you everyone. I really do appreciate you being here.
Awesome. And I will be sending out the link to, for everybody, but it doesn't look like we have any questions. So thank you so much, everybody, for your time. And thank you again, Carly.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good one, everybody.
Thanks.
Take care.